I just got back from my first professional audition, and I want to tell you a story about how it went. If you enjoy this video and find the information in it helpful, then please leave a like on this video so that I know that and I can know to create more videos like this for you in the future. And then subscribe so that you can get those videos and be notified when I upload those videos in the future. So the reason why I want to share my story of how my first professional audition went is sort of twofold. The first thing is I want to sort of do it as a way to explain what the professional audition experience and process is like for anybody who might be interested in doing that, so you know like what the steps are and what the whole process looks like. And then the second thing is actually because I want your help to help me improve with auditioning. So I'm going to tell my story, and then at the end I want you to comment down below with the things that you got out of the story, like maybe some things that you thought I did well, some things that you think I could improve for next time, so that I have all of that feedback from you guys to help me win an audition in the future. I think it'll also be super helpful for you to do that because it'll help you to sort of gather the tips and tricks out of this video for your potential future auditions. So the journey all started about 2 or 3 months ago. Towards the end of June, I was graduating from school and was like, okay, I guess as any graduate now, I need to go out there and get myself a real job, which is kind of terrifying and sort of a natural part of everybody's life. So I had been following a couple job posting boards. Some of the good ones are Musical Chairs, which is the one that I found it on. You can just Google Musical Chairs. I'm pretty sure it's musicalchairs.com, and then you can see all kinds of different listings for different jobs for clarinet and any other specific instrument that you might be looking at, which is a really neat resource. Clarinet jobs on Facebook is another pretty good one that posts quite a few jobs. I think Musical Chairs has a little bit more stuff and is always there to look at, whereas Clarinet Jobs is just a Facebook page that posts every now and then. But the way that I found this audition was through Musical Chairs. So I got an email one day that said, it was like a weekly update of all the different job postings that were new, and I opened the email and I saw that there was one for the Air Force Band. And I had been looking at military bands and I was interested in auditioning for military bands. And I knew that there were sort of at least 2 categories depending on which branch of the military. There's 2 or 3, but it's sort of like the regional bands and then the premier bands. The regional bands I'm less interested in. They're still great positions, but I just knew that I was looking for the premier band. So I was like, okay, there's an Air Force Band job. I'll click on that and see what it is. And it turns out that it was for the Air Force Concert Band, which is their premier band. So I was like, hey, this might be a good audition. It's coming up. August 20th was when the audition was, and August 8th is when the materials were due. So looking at that at the end of June was perfect timing. I was done with school. I was like, hey, I'm gonna take this audition. I think it would be a good one to get started with and see how it goes and get some experience. So after finding the position that I wanted to apply for, the next step was to submit a resume and actually apply for it. For most of the military bands, they also request a pre-screening recording along with the application. Most orchestras will just ask for a resume and not ask for a recording, and most of the military bands will ask for a recording, but every audition is sort of unique. And this one in particular did ask for a pre-screening recording. It wasn't too crazy. It was a Mozart Clarinet Concerto, the Exposition, Mendelssohn Symphony No. 3, a couple excerpts from that, the Aegean Festival Overture, and the Bizet Intermezzo, which is a slow lyrical thing. I had played Aegean Festival Overture before. I had studied the Mendelssohn 3 excerpt a lot. I studied the Bizet excerpt once, and then of course Mozart is Mozart, and I felt comfortable with that. So I was pretty busy leading up until that July 8th deadline. So I had been practicing and preparing this stuff for the pre-screening, but I didn't have a chance to like actually record it until July 8th, which was when like the deadline was due. So I was a little bit rushed to do that. But it worked out. I was able to get some like decent recordings in a just quick recording session that morning. And I put them together. I liked it well enough and sent it out with my resume. After that, I did have the list of like all of the excerpts and the music too that would be asked on the audition, which is kind of neat. Sometimes, depending on the audition, they'll either send you all of the music like right when you're interested in and applying, or they'll wait for you to like be approved and officially invited to the audition before they send you the full list. So this was nice. I already had the full list. I probably should have been practicing it a lot more right away, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be invited. I had previously sent a resume to a couple different orchestra auditions and ended up not being invited. So I didn't want to put in a lot of effort without the like for sure knowing that I was going to the audition because that's like such a bummer when like they don't even invite you to like try. And with this one in particular, my tape was okay, but I like had only done it in one day, so I like wasn't super confident about it. But sure enough, a couple weeks later, I got an email. I was out at lunch or brunch. We were having these delightful cinnamon rolls with my wife. When I got the email, I saw an email from the Air Force. And I opened it up and like the first word was like congratulations, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually like gonna get to do my first audition. It was super exciting. I'm sure you can imagine. So from there, it was towards like the middle of July at that point. But I was also working on a super awesome 30-day challenge with Quick Start Clarinet where I did a video training every day. So that took a lot of time to film those videos and edit them and upload them. And we were also in the process of moving to a new apartment. So I was super busy. I still got my practicing in and really like worked through those excerpts. But there were several days where I was like, oh man, like I did so much today, like I don't know if I'm gonna like have time to get my practicing in. And some days where I was just like not super focused and didn't practice as much as I had hoped to or would have liked to. I think it's super important, especially when preparing for an audition, but just in general, if you want to be improving, to like set a sacred practice time and like no matter what, like that's the time you're practicing for each day. Like don't schedule anything during that time. Like that's your time. There's some really great musicians who do that, and a lot of them have their sacred practice time like 10 p.m. to midnight or like midnight to 2 a.m. For me, that would be crazy and also impossible because I live in an apartment. But finding some little block of like 2 hours or an hour here and an hour there that you can dedicate to being like your practice time is the best bet to really having a successful practice routine. Of course, I didn't follow my own advice and was just practicing when I could and got in as much as I could and worked through my preparation. The list was not too bad. It was 13 different excerpts, both orchestra and band excerpt, a few A clarinet excerpts as well, and then the exposition of the Mozart concerto, and then one duet excerpt too that would be played with somebody in the section. So I had my list of excerpts. I was using Modacity to organize my practicing and had it all in like one practice session that was like my Air Force band audition practice section. And I had like a little rating next to each one, and I knew like how each excerpt was coming along, so I knew where I could focus my attention, which was nice, and I was sort of just grinding on it, working through it. There were a couple excerpts that were like super crazy hard, even though they were like not that technically demanding. It was just took tons and tons of concentration and had some like awkward finger patterns in there. So it took a lot of work to get some of those less familiar excerpts worked up. But I did it, and as I was coming up to it, I was feeling decent about it, but I still knew I had a lot of excerpts that needed to be worked on and worked through a lot more. And it was August 10th that I was with some friends, and they were like, I was talking about the audition coming up, and they were like, oh wow, that's cool, that's like in 10 days. And I was like, oh, that's like in 10 days. And again, I was a little bit panicking. Luckily at that point, we had moved in and were like unpacked and settled in. So I had a lot more free time to really dedicate to practicing. And those last 10 days, I went like super hard. At least 2 hours like every day of practicing, and just really kept working through those excerpts and like getting the reps in to make sure that was going well. And as the audition got closer and closer, I was starting to feel really nice and comfortable. I had also started, even like from the beginning when I was still working stuff up, every time I got to a new excerpt for the day that I was practicing, I would just start with a run through and like record it right in the Modacity app, just to sort of practice how it is in an audition. Because when you're doing an audition, it's just you like get one chance to do it, and then like, that's it. So it was nice to have had that practice throughout the whole preparation process of like just doing one and going. And in that last week of like really working super hard on it, I was feeling pretty good about my level of preparation and my ability to just go in there and like play the best I could. So it was getting up close to the audition about a week before, and I had gotten an email from them that we would hear more information about it in like the next couple days. And I was waiting on that because I had heard that the military bands will pay for your travel expenses. So I didn't want to like buy plane tickets or like get my hotel or anything before I knew about that. So it turns out that the Air Force does not pay for travel expenses, at least for this particular audition. So be sure to like ask about that and like clarify those things right away. Most orchestras don't pay for any travel expenses. Some military bands do, but apparently not all of them, which I've learned. So it was about a week before, or a few days before, and I still didn't have my plane ticket or like hotel reserved. So I was like, okay, this audition's like in a few days, I need to like figure this out or like decide to not do it. But I had prepared and was like feeling pretty good about my preparation. And I was like, I need to get my first audition experience in like sooner than later. So I went for it. I was able to get like okay prices on plane tickets and hotels, which was a big relief. And I was like ready to do the audition. I had everything planned out. The weekend before, I relaxed a little bit to just sort of like get in the zone and like not stress out too much about anything. And then on Monday morning, I left for the audition, got on my flight, flew out to Baltimore, actually, the Baltimore-Washington International Airport, which was like an hour away from my hotel, which was kind of lengthy, but it was also like $200 cheaper for the plane tickets than the one that was close. So I was like, I'm gonna go for it. Like a 1 hour Uber or Lyft can't possibly be more than $200. And it turns out it wasn't, so that was a good choice. So I flew into Baltimore, landed, Ubered to my hotel, got all settled in the day before the audition, was feeling pretty good. Got my clothes ironed so I would look good for the audition, even though it was a blind audition. Most auditions these days are blind auditions when they're for like bigger groups at least. So I had everything ironed, ready to go, and I just had the afternoon to practice and check my reads. My hotel room, the acoustics were like super dead, which was very different from my room that I've been practicing in, which is the room that I'm in now. And you can probably hear by just my talking that this is a pretty live room acoustically. So my hotel room was like the complete opposite of this. Like playing fortissimo felt like, and it's just like all of the sound was being absorbed, and it was not super pleasant. But it was good practice because the actual room that I auditioned in was more similar to the hotel room than this room. So that was good practice, but still didn't feel great. But I found a read that I was happy with, and I was like ready to go. It was my old faithful, good trusty read that I've been doing many performances on because it just always sounds better than all my other reads. So I was ready to go the day before. I went to bed early. I got some lunch to pack up for the next day in case I was going to be there all day. had a good dinner, and had my breakfast like in the fridge ready to go. And I went to bed nice and early because I was in the 9 a.m. audition block, which was the first one. So it was going to be like pretty early, early arrival. And I knew that I wasn't going to have time to warm up at all before I got there, so I wanted to get there really nice and early so that I would have plenty of time to warm up at the audition. So I went to bed, got a good night's rest actually. I was surprised that I wasn't like that nervous at all, and it wasn't restless at all, so that was really nice. And then I woke up early the next morning, like ready to go. Got my nice clothes on, had my breakfast that was ready to go, and then I Ubered over to the Air Force Base and got registered and checked in for the day of the audition. So when I got to the audition, the first thing was to like register and check in, which was easy enough. Oftentimes at like orchestral auditions, they'll make you send in like a deposit check. And at the registration, you'll get your check back, and it's just to make sure that you actually show up for the audition. And if you don't, then they'll cash your check. But that wasn't the case for this audition, so I just signed my name, registered, checked in, everything was good. I got shown to the warm-up room. I was the first one there, which was kind of nice, because I was able to like not be walking into this room full of like frantic clarinetists. So I got everything set up, got my little corner in the room, and then some other people started coming in. And the second guy there was like super chill and nice, and pretty much everybody at the audition was really nice and friendly and amicable, and it was a good time, and I met some cool people. But then somebody I knew actually walked in, somebody I had gone to school with in undergrad, which I wasn't totally expecting, but it was cool to see them. And it's always bound to happen that you're gonna run into somebody that you know at an audition. So it's good to be prepared for that possibility and sort of have a plan for if you're gonna wanna like chat with them a bunch and like talk with them and like catch up, which I wouldn't really recommend doing before the audition, or if you want to just like ignore them completely, which also is like probably a little bit rude. So you sort of want to have like a plan for that possibility, because it is a possibility. You also never know how many people are going to be in the like group warm-up room and how big it is going to be, so you got to be prepared for everything. So I'm in my room, in the group warm-up room, and there's more clarinetists coming in. I'm sort of chatting with some people a little bit, just like meeting some new people, and it was all cool. We were doing some long tones, we were playing some stuff, and then they came in and posted the first round excerpts, which was the Mozart exposition, the excerpts from Mendelssohn's Symphony No. 3, the Bizet Intermezzo excerpt from the pre-screening, and the Dahl Sinfonietta excerpt. So once they posted that was like when things started getting a little bit more serious. More people started coming in who were going to be auditioning in the later blocks too. So it was starting to like focus and like settle down. We also draw numbers. So I was in like the 9 o'clock block, and there were 7 people in that block, which was an hour. So it was 7 people had to go between 9 and 10. And we all just drew random numbers to decide that order for that block. That's how a lot of auditions go. And I drew number 6 out of 7, which was kind of a bummer because I was like the first one there and then like almost the last one to go in my audition block. So I had a lot of time in the group warm-up room to like not really know what to do. And I was warming up and like playing through the excerpts, checking some spots, going slowly on some things. I felt like my warm-up was like okay. I tried a couple different reads and ended up settling on the best read that I had chosen the day before. And then about 10-12 minutes before my audition, they come into the group warm-up room and like call my number and pull me out into an individual warm-up room, which was nice because I was able to have some time to myself in a warm-up room. And again, most auditions will work this way, where there's sort of like a group room where everybody's going crazy, and then there's a little bit of time in your own room before the audition. It can be a little unnerving because your time in your own room can sometimes be really long or really short. or sometimes not even happen at all. So you sort of have to be prepared for all of the possibilities. Mine was really nice. I got into the warm-up room, I went through the excerpts and played through some of the Mozart. I knew I wanted to do Mozart last because it's what's the only thing on A clarinet in the first round, and it was going to be the first thing, so I wanted to make sure that I had like played on my A clarinet right before I went into the audition. And it worked out really nicely. I was just playing on the A clarinet, had just finished up like looking at the spots in Mozart that I wanted to go over, and set down my clarinets and like swabbed them out, and like just like 30 seconds after that the proctor came in to get me for the audition. So my individual warm-up time like worked out perfectly. It was like exactly the right amount of time. So at this point I was like a little bit nervous. It was like coming up. I went out into the hall and I was ready to go. I was feeling pretty good. And then I walked into the audition room and I was like, you know what? No matter what happens, like I'm just here to like give it a shot, see how it works out. Do my best and see where that puts me. So I go up to play Mozart. I'm playing through, everything's going pretty well. I had like a couple finger mistakes every now and then, and in some of the other excerpts, maybe not everything like sounded great. The acoustics of the room, like I mentioned before, were like not great. It was pretty dry, which I think is good for listening to an audition because you can really hear like all of the mistakes, but I just didn't have any like beautiful warmth to my sound, and it was just like didn't feel great what was like coming back to me. But I played through it. I think everything went pretty well. I was happy with how it went. And then I left and was done with that. I went back to the group room, grabbed my stuff, packed up my instruments, and then there was this quiet room, which was also nice, where everybody else from my round was like waiting to hear the results, where they would announce if anybody was advanced to the next round of the audition, where they would go through and do the same thing pretty much, and then maybe be advanced again to a finals before the day was over. Because again, we had only played 3 of the 13 excerpts plus the Mozart, so there were a lot more excerpts that they could have listened to and could have heard, and they would have heard in the next rounds. So sitting there waiting for the results, and of course they didn't advance me, which was okay. It was just my first one. I felt like I did okay in the audition, but like I could have done better. And listening to the people around me, I think I was at a good level with them, but there was definitely people who just seemed more solid with things. Yeah, I think I definitely could have done more in my preparation to like feel really confident about this. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned, was that for any audition, especially if you want to even have a chance of winning or even auditioning, like you can't, or advancing, I mean, you can't just like go in there and be like, you know, I'm gonna play like the best I can and like see what happens. You have to like really like go for it and make sure it's like really the best you can do, and put your all into it, even if it's a smaller audition where you think that you should have a good chance of advancing. You have to like really go for it, like from the first note that you play in the audition. So after that, I left the base, went back to my hotel, changed, went out to lunch with the guy that I knew from school, which was pretty fun to catch up, and then just sort of hung out in DC for the day, and then flew back the next morning, and now I'm back here to tell you the story about how it went. So I hope that was helpful for you to sort of hear what the process of auditioning is like. Please leave comments if there was anything that you noticed that was like, oh my gosh, like you should have done this instead, or anything that was like, wow, you like did a good job of doing that. Like I'll make note of that and do that in future auditions, or things like that. I definitely think I got some things right and some things that I'll know to do better in the future. But I want to hear what you think I did right and what I could do better in the future. So thanks so much for watching that and listening to my story. Again, I hope you liked hearing about what the process is like and what the story of my first audition was. And I hope some of your comments help me to win my next audition or some future audition. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.